I know for sure that you're going to laugh when I say that it is cold here, but for us in the Canary Islands, 15 degrees, it's a bit chilly already. And that's why I thought that I could make a nice neck scarf, but in fur. We're going to measure, trace and cut our fabric on the wrong side. We're going to use a button and ribbon. We're going to keep the ribbon inside and we sew it, keeping one side open to turn it right sides out. And lastly, to sew the button in place on the last side with an invisible stitch. I have all this fabric from my project I did in summer with a kalima. Check it out if you haven't seen it already. And I was thinking that it could be nice because I have loads of little things that I'm not going to use, are not usable at all. So I thought that it could be nice to have a fur neck, sort of scarf. It's an easy project and it's going to be cute. I could also make a waistcoat for the baby. Well, not baby already, but my baby. I'm going to cut a rectangle of 60 by 12, 13, 14, it depends on what you want it for. 10 is like a bit short and 15 is like a bit much. And I thought of 60 because I just wanted to go around my neck. I don't want it to get all the way down, but you can make it longer depending on what you want it for. If you want it to cover more of your cleavage and underneath a jacket, that's up to you. It's a bit of an eyeballing project. And because I want to make use of this strange bit, I'm going to be cutting not two rectangles of 13 by 60, but one of 26. I had to think that. I'm going to cut one rectangle of double the width. Not the width, yes, double the short side. Of 26 by 60. What I need is to use this narrow side, and for that I'm going to try to smooth the line and make it straight, because this is not, and I'm going to use some pins to avoid it moving while I'm cutting. This fabric looks a lot more frightening than what it is. And make sure you cut your two pieces. I only have one piece, but if you have two pieces, make sure you cut them on the same direction so you don't end up with twisted fur that goes up instead of coming down. And another thing is to cut your pattern on the wrong side of the fabric so you can see clearly and follow lines easily. And to sew it, it is true that I have a beautiful box full of new feet that I don't know how to use. So because when I did the waistcoat, I saw it on the Singer, I just tried on a piece of material I just cut. I tried on the Alpha machine and it sewed it all right. It looks nice and it didn't have any problem. So I'm going to sew it with a normal foot, but a thick needle, and then I have loads of homework, don't I?
And while I was talking, I took off all the pins. And you need the pins so the fabric doesn't move in your sewing machine. So don't take the pins off. Don't be like Irene. Silly Irene.
You have to leave open one of the shorter sides, so we can take it inside out or put it right sides out, and then sew that last bit by hand. And before sewing it together, we have to take a minute and think how are we going to keep it in place, because it's not going to on its own. We need a button or some ribbon to tie it up, something. So we can use a nice bit of ribbon we have around. We can even use something like this. Or even if you have an old watch that doesn't work, you can use the straps to make it as well. Or we can use some nice buttons we have, or even if we don't want to do any of this, we can use a brooch. And what I'm going to do is to use this big gray button. We could make a buttonhole, but I'm going to use some ribbon and I'm going to measure just the width of the button so it can go through, and that way it'll be safe. And I'm going to put it in this way on one of these sides. And let's cut the corner a little bit so it's easier when we put it right sides out. And this doesn't look very good, so it is because all the fur is in, it's not sewn, well, it's a bit sewn in. So with the seam ripper we're going to just comb it and make it come out without ripping the fabric. See, and that's much better now. We're going to sew the bottom, but we're going to decide where to sew it. And because we want it to cross on top of your neck so you are warm, we have to sew it on the other side of, on the opposite side of the ribbon. If we have the ribbon here on top, the bottom has to be on the side on the bottom. Does that make sense? If we put it here on the same side, more or less, you won't have your neck covered. So we need to cross it on top and put the button, where's the loop? Here. Put the button here on this side. And I'm going to cut quite a bit because I'm going to be sewing the bit that is open. Although we'll have to change needles, but I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to use a pin to make sure what I do. Aquí, pues aquí. And to sew the bottom bit and keep the thread in so you don't see it, I'm going to make an invisible stitch, like a ladder sort of stitch, and it's really easy because you just have to pinch on one side, cross to the other and go down on this same side. So that way you're going to make the steps of the ladder, and when you pull at the end, all the little steps will disappear inside the material. And for that I'm going to be using my upholster's needle. The good thing about this material is that even though it's a bit frightening when you first see it, it's quite forgiving, it's quite easy to sew. It's not, I think it's more difficult to sew leather or faux leather than this. The only problem it has, it's all the hairs, all the little fur goes everywhere in your sewing room, and it can go as well in your sewing machine and make it a bit stuck, but you clean it afterwards and that's it. I think it's quite nice and it makes nice stuff, high-end look stuff. So I think I have to use the rest I have, but I don't have much left. So I think even this afternoon, my baby's going to have a new little coat. Let's see how that works out. It's always hot though, so. And that's it. We just make it a bit nicer by brushing it so the hair doesn't get stuck. And this is the final result. I think it looks quite cute, doesn't it? I like the length of it because you can wear a jacket underneath and you're still warm, but it doesn't feel bulky, like you have a lot. Of course, you can make it longer to feel your chest a bit warmer or even wider. It doesn't really matter. You can add a button or you can add nothing and tie it or use a brooch to make it stay in place, and I think any kind is nice. I think it's quite sophisticated and gives a little something to any look. So let me know then in the comments what you think, if you have one, if you think of making one, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything next week. Bye!